Okay, so we got a live one. Which technically we should be streaming down. Everything should be happy. Should be hearing stuff coming out of here. Okay. So then if we switch to this. This one. Just test that everything's coming down here again. I'm pretty sure that would work. We can make that work.
Yep. Okay. I'll have to experiment with it.
Just test that everything's coming down here. Okay. Ding, 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 ding. I can do that a cappella style. I'm just waiting for this to come up. Why is everything's 30 seconds up. I fucking left my notes down. I took all my notes down on this. I'll just bring the article up. Okay.
So it's all working?
It's all working.
Can you just double check the sound? Because I jostled the...
Check 1, 2.
Check 1, 2.
Yep, it's all good.
I mean, is it coming? Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yes.
we can wait.
It's going through this thing.
We can wait and just listen to it. Yeah, it's working.
Yeah. Oh. Good to go?
Good to go. Oh, hang on. Record.
Hello and welcome to the BAP. Today it's the 30th of July 2016. We are broadcasting from the Progressive Bubble. My name is Franco and joining me is Jason. Damn it, Greg, why can't you get the soundboard right? That was Greg the intern once again failing at his only one job. Basically, he does nothing for the week. He lives for 1 hour on Sundays. Today being Saturday, though, we had to slightly adjust the day we're broadcasting. However, that does not belay the point.
Yeah, that's right. You got the day wrong, obviously.
And now we have reverb from the testing laptop. Well, that's just fantastic.
God damn it, Greg. Okay.
We eventually might actually get to discussing domestic and international politics if we can get our act together.
Yeah. I think we're there.
Let's crack on with douchebag filterage. I've been walking a journey with my partner to introduce her to the classics of the 80s. She missed a lot of the quintessential movie experience that defined not only myself, but many children of the 80s.
Wow.
So today we visited the 1980 film classic, The Blues Brothers.
Oh, wow.
And
It's been a long time.
unlike many of the other 80s films that I've visited, this one still holds up quite well. I mean, it's the cinematography they've done is really great, and and just seeing all those fantastic blues and rhythm singers is just great experience.
It was
Still very
enjoyable?
watchable today.
Okay. You haven't tried that Tremors one yet that I kept telling you about? Kevin Bacon? Come on.
I'll put it on
Tremors.
the list. We did watch Big Trouble in Little China,
Oh, no, that's a classic.
and once again, a lot of fun.
That is, but I have seen that fairly recently as well. That's a great movie. I love that one.
Still holds up pretty well.
I've been introducing my partner to the Bourne movies.
Oh, I was actually funny you mentioned Bourne because I love Bourne. It's one of my favorite series. I love the books. I love the movies. I think.
Did you like the fourth movie?
No, I don't count that. There's only 3 Bourne movies
that's
as far as I'm concerned. The fourth one, there was just something drastically wrong. But I was really looking forward to the latest release. Was going to go see it on Friday night. And when I saw that it was going to cost $50 Australian to see a movie for 2 people, I went, yeah, I can't do that.
What? When does that happen? $50 Australian dollars.
Yep, $27 a ticket. Or what, $24.50.
You need to go to Belmont Forum.
Really?
It's always $10 tickets
Oh, I'll have to check that
all week round. It's fantastic.
out. Okay.
I intend on going during this week,
Right.
and that was why I wanted to sort of revisit the movies
Yeah.
and introduce my partner to it, and she was normally a little bit reticent for these sort of movies, but got hooked on it, and in fact finished watching the trilogy by herself during the rest of the week. I was quite surprised. I was very surprised. However, did not finish the fourth movie. Wasn't
a fan?
Well, because oddly enough, she did try to finish, but I don't think it was any critique on the actual movie, except that Google Play has this 48-hour limit, and she couldn't quite sit through it in the first watching, and then you run out of your time. She couldn't watch it again.
Well, don't blame her on that one, and don't bother trying to finish it off. It's just woeful. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with it, but it's just like, well, if Matt Damon's on it, why even bother watching it? Something Matt Damon owns. He created a character. He owns the character now. You'd have to recreate the whole series from scratch if you wanted to go down a different path.
And I've still got to rewatch the third one yet. Before this week. So,
well, in the last month, I rewatched the first one, and once again,
they're great movies. They're great movies. Although you start looking at the technology, the flip phones are starting to look really fucking archaic now.
Yeah. My mother's only complaint about Bourne movies was the wobble cam.
Oh yeah,
says it makes her
what's
dizzy
his name?
watching it.
Who is it? Paul Greengrass is the director. He's a big fan
of
the shaky cam, and choppy edits and that kind of thing. And apparently, some people don't like it. I don't seem to mind it, but
not a problem for me.
Yeah, I know some people get almost a little bit seasick, get motion sickness from it.
Yeah, definitely not a problem for me.
Watching those the Bourne movies, it has all the elements of those classic thrillers. It has the car chases, the crazy car chases, which miraculously no one seems to die in. And yet there's cars just wrecked all over the place.
And the fight scenes are always amazing.
Fight scenes, bullets flying everywhere, yet normally only 1 or 2 genuinely deserving people die. And so they're great. They're great movies.
The other movie I'm looking forward to seeing is Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I don't know much. I don't know. I've heard a little bit about it, but I'm not that fussed about it. I guess.
Well, I'm not familiar with the ancient lore of the Suicide Squad, but I like what I've seen from the movie.
The preview looks pretty good. It's got Will Smith in it, hasn't it? So, and that's what surprised me. Been hearing a lot about the Suicide Squad, and you hear about some of the characters. I didn't even know Will Smith was in it.
Yeah, well, I think the 2 big main characters, well, the ones they're promoting majorly is The Joker by Jay Leto, and I think it was somebody Leto, and Harlequin.
Yeah. Jared Leto, and who's the actor?
Jared Leto, that's right.
Playing Harlequin. That's terrible that we don't know who the actress is playing Harlequin.
Even though I've watched 4 trailers just before you came on Suicide Squad, I don't pay attention to those sort of details.
Yeah.
But there's like 6 other characters which get very little push through in the trailers.
Yeah. And I guess the other movie which I will be checking out just through is Star Trek Beyond.
I'm going to wait for that to come out on TV.
Yeah.
Sorry, on for rent on.
No, I think I want to see that on the big screen. Yeah. And I'm a bit of a Trek fan. It's something
I love Star Trek, but
I would like the reboot as well.
They're making it like a catastrophe movie series now, and it's just I sort of like the political intrigue of previous movies.
Political intrigue in Star Trek. Okay. Not really a series known for it, I would have thought, but genuinely, you must have found some. Okay. What are we moving on to next? We've got...
what caught my eye this week was Turnbull slamming down Kevin... sorry, I should lead in. Can't assume that everyone's familiar with Australian domestic politics. Current Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull...
Is he still Prime Minister? Is he still?
Well, it depends how you want to frame it. Technically, he holds the title of Prime Minister. Does he pull his own strings?
Yeah.
Mercilessly slammed down Kevin Rudd's nomination for Secretary General of the United Nations.
You know what? I thought that was a pretty ambitious ask for Kevin Rudd to begin with, but apparently they had an agreement or something. They had some...
Well, apparently, from what I understand, he had previously approached Malcolm to feel him out whether he would support his nomination. So basically, apparently, if you want to, you have to be nominated by your country's government to be a potential candidate for the Secretary General of the United Nations. So obviously with Kevin Rudd knowing that, he would have had to have approached the government of the day, which apparently he has done, and seemed to have gotten positive feedback that the Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, and Malcolm were on board.
Okay.
And so Julie Bishop put forward the nomination, and Malcolm Turnbull did an about face on it, apparently, under pressure from the hard right conservative of the parties.
Wow. I guess the problem is that Kevin Rudd isn't likely to get any support from even his own party, is he?
Not necessarily. Look, just because some former colleagues didn't think he was a nice boss doesn't mean he's not necessarily competent for the role.
This is one of those things. I wasn't paying much attention to him. So I mean, Kevin Rudd seems to get... the people I hear that Kevin Rudd was a nasty piece from were the people that benefited politically from his demise.
Quite possibly, yeah.
And so I don't know how much I can trust what they're saying.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? He was a very popular amongst the public.
He was the people's prime minister.
He was for a while. And but then he got quite severely knifed when he tried to push some fairly populist kind of politics.
And look, in some places in industry and government and commerce, authoritarian style of management can be quite successful. However, in the game of politics, unless you're a dictator, when you have to get consensus in a democratic system of government, sometimes...
Yeah, it also depends on your style of authoritarianism.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a micromanager for no good reason, that's not really authoritarianism, that's just a failed management technique.
Yeah, it's not to say that technique wouldn't work in other situations, so forth. So it seems a bit petty that's the sort of excuses that the coalition party were putting forward as to why they couldn't support his nomination.
Why should we support someone like Kevin Rudd for United Nations Attorney? What is he? The Secretary General of the United Nations.
Well, we're not supporting it. The government just puts forward a candidate.
Right, but
there's no weight really behind that. He still has to be the actual review of who gets the job is up to the United Nations.
Do we think? I don't know. Do I think he would have been a worthy?
Well, I don't think he's done anything that would disqualify him from, having a go.
But I mean,
so hold on.
Not having a checklist of
the only disqualification that government's put forward was we don't think he's a nice person. I mean, it's pretty weak.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what he has in his favour. What it is about what he.
Well, I think he worked for many years as what government department did he work in?
Was he Foreign Affairs?
Yeah,
No.
Foreign Affairs for a long time.
Okay.
Obviously had quite a bit of competence in that area.
I know he's
seems like a good start for someone wanting to be involved in the United Nations.
Yeah, he touts the fact that he speaks fluent Mandarin.
Yeah, and if Julie Bishop, who's quite a competent politician, was willing to recommend him, there must be can't be all
you're
bad.
Right, you're right. The one that's actually competent, Julie Bishop, out of that entire cabinet, was willing to back him.
Let's be honest, you don't have to like people for them to be able to do a good job.
No,
people like Malcolm, and he has a shit job.
Exactly.
So I don't think the government of the day has put forward a valid reason to disqualify the candidacy of Kevin. They don't need to support it. They can just nominate him.
So does that mean the current Secretary General is looking to retire, or is there a term limit or something like that?
I'm not sure, but yeah, Ban Ki-moon's leaving the position. I don't know if it's because of the term limit or he's resigning on his own accord. And previously, the governments have taken a a bipartisan position on nominating previous members of government to positions. It's never been an issue necessarily that a government of the day would not necessarily recommend someone from the other side.
And I guess if Saudi Arabia can be the head of the Human Rights Council, then Australia should be able to be the head of the United Nations. I mean,
And Australia, you mean? Yes. Well, look, to be honest, would Kevin Rudd beat the other 12 candidates so far? Probably not.
Who knows?
Apparently, the Portuguese nominee, Simon Guterres, is the leading candidate, if that means anything. So I probably don't think Kevin would actually win the position necessarily.
I'd be interested to know the selection criteria.
But I think he still has a lot of...
You've been working through selection criteria quite extensively, haven't you, Franco?
Yes.
I wonder what the selection criteria for United Nations Secretary General.
Yeah, I love USA.
Well, apparently that's why Ban Ki-moon was actually a reasonable one, was because he wasn't a US puppet.
Okay. Well, I think the 5 members of the Security Council have a greater...
they have a greater say over what happens eventually. They have veto power.
So basically you have to be five-faced.
Yeah.
Considering all those members have very not necessarily aligned political objectives.
So who is it? There's Russia, UK...
Russia, China, France, England, America.
And getting all 5 of those to agree on one thing is almost impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, further from hobbling someone's attempt to win that position when they haven't really done anything that would obviously disqualify them, so for Malcolm, it seemed pretty piss weak to not be able to say, we're going to put the candidacy forward. Doesn't have to be a cheerleader for Kevin Rudd. No one's saying that.
Yeah.
And, previous...
I guess he figured this was something that he didn't feel like compromising any political capital on.
No. Well, it's obvious. He doesn't... He's still very weak in his position.
Yeah.
Feels like he has Damocles' sword hanging above him.
And he doesn't know what's going to trigger it.
Because now he's looking even silly because Kevin Rudd's released that correspondence, which seemingly seems like previously Malcolm was willing to support the nomination or at least put it through.
Like leaked emails being escaped. That never happens these days, does it?
I mean, I don't think Australia in general, cares whether Kevin Rudd becomes Secretary General. I don't think Australians take too kindly from stopping someone for, petty reasons of, he's a Labor politician, we don't like him. That seems very petty. I would imagine that seems petty to the Australian community.
Clearly there's some petty people that are demanding this of Malcolm Turnbull.
Well, within the coalition party, but I don't think the Australian public support that sort of petty behaviour
terribly much. And I think they, in Australian... typical Australian parochialism, we'd be quite proud to have an Australian Secretary General. So,
and
if Kevin Rudd got that, they'd be more than happy to.
As I said before, governments of the day have previously put forward candidates from the opposition party. So, like Peter Costello got put forward to some economic thing. Can't remember what it was. Another one got put to as representative for the Vatican. So
clearly.
There's been precedents where governments today have done that. They've not
obviously
begrudged anyone because they were a member at some time held a position for the opposition government.
So obviously, I think maybe they're saving that position for Joe Hockey or someone like Tony Abbott.
Well, what's been interesting is that obviously some of the more centralist newspapers have gone to town saying weak source Malcolm Turnbull is on that one.
Yeah, well, and it's quite accurate, I guess.
And some of the right-leaning ones are saying, this is just Malcolm Turnbull continuing on with Tony Abbott's pledge to support Helen Clark's nomination, which is meaningless because countries don't support other countries' nominations. They just put someone forward. Their supporting of another country's candidate bears no weight.
Yeah. Okay, well, moving from Australian international politics to very local stuff, the Perth government... Liberal government released their transport network plan to the population of 3.5 million and 2050 and beyond, of course.
Okay,
They've got and beyond. But
so more cars and more roads and less buses, less trains.
Well, it's quite crazy. They've apparently what's getting a look in, and so they've got 2 portions of the plan. They expect the population of Perth to hit 3.5 million by about 2050. Mm-hmm. So they have a plan going forward to 2050 of what they will be rolling out. And then they have a plan of what they may roll out after 2050, which to me just sounds like a load of garbage. I mean, after 2050, there's no guarantee of anything. I don't think there's much guarantee of what they've actually got planned out now. the plan that as it's released now has no costings whatsoever. So there's no money allocated. They don't know how they're going to price it in. But they do have some pretty ambitious goals. They're talking about expansion of a Perth subway.
Okay.
So out to the immediate northern suburbs through Northbridge, I think through to ECU sort of direction almost. And expanding the rail network so that there's some spurs off the sort of core rail networks out to Malaga, Morley, through to there's the airport link already going through. And the big one, which I was kind of interested in, especially if I ever get to move back into the city area, is light rail.
Yes, so there was an original plan called the Max Light Rail, which was going to extend from the University of Western Australia, based in the western suburbs, going through the city all the way to Curtin University, based in the southeast.
Actually, maybe I've got this a little bit wrong, but the Max Light Rail was actually going to go through to Mirrabooka, go all the way up to Mirrabooka.
Yes.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
However, the basically the re-establishment of the light rail as a network as it once did exist will be going from UWA QE2 Hospital through the CBD to Curtin.
Yes.
And out to out to Vic Park sort of direction as well.
Yep.
But it won't be extending up northway up through to Mirrabooka. Yep. So they'll have more extensive bus portals and bus sort of routes and that kind of thing. But the light rail's kind of a little bit limited. Then they've got some rather, so they've got these sort of goals, rather ambitious sort of tunneling under the river. So they've got tunnels that go that basically go under the river and route traffic from the east side of the city under the river to popping out near the freeway to join up with the Mitchell Freeway, so bypassing Elizabeth Quay and all that kind of thing. These things just seem like they will, like a tunnel of those sort of size for Perth just doesn't seem like we could ever, like we don't have the population to support that kind of expenditure. But one of the more interesting ones, which apparently will get a look in, and it may affect you directly, well, if you're still living around this area, Franco, is the bicycle bridge.
A bicycle bridge?
A bicycle bridge that extends from, and I had this on my notes before I left them behind. I'll see if I can find it again. Point Chidlow, is that right?
Sounds right. That's in the suburb of Nedlands, is it?
I'll just try and look this one up again, because this was probably one of the more interesting sort of things they were talking about. It was going to reduce the time taken to cycle from Fremantle to Perth to 45 minutes.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
So currently, for a proficient rider going at an average speed, that would take about 45 minutes, I'm guessing?
Yeah. In a car, yeah.
No, on a bike.
Oh, from the Perth, but
Perth
you'd be on roads shared with other vehicles and things like that. Whereas this would be a bicycle a pathway and bridges mainly for just bicycle, and completely for bicycles. So it was going to join Port Walter, Chidley Point, and Point Resolution.
Okay.
So, and it's the artist diagram was this huge sweeping sort of bridge, which looked pretty impressive. But yeah, just crossing the river at 3 points basically.
But only for foot and bicycle traffic.
Foot and bicycle traffic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting.
But once again, these things are all very ambitious, and they're supposedly through to 2050, which I think, given the incompetence of our current governments, getting them to plan anything that far out just sounds a little bit.
Well, and how many key assets are they proposing that we need to sell to fund?
Yeah. Well,
all these endeavours.
Well, I guess who knows what they're selling now, because they've had to back away from the ones they wanted to sell. The port, the Fremantle
port is still going through apparently.
Is it?
I think the Triple C or whoever was reviewing it is now feeling a bit more comfortable with how that process will manifest.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Who got paid off? Because they were slamming that shut for at one stage, and now they're gonna keep it going. Okay. So there's some very impressive things. It should be worth people who are interested in this kind of thing take a look at the plans. They have some extensive sort of maps about what they've got planned up until 2050 and what they may have planned for after that. The rail network is getting extensively expanded, which I think is a good thing.
Especially for Perth, which has a very what do you call it, distributed living style.
Yeah.
So we don't have high density living.
But I also noticed high density living is coming in finally.
Slowly.
The medium density stuff especially, and that. So hopefully.
Well, we have a huge urban sprawl, and we don't really have the road network to support it.
Yeah, what I noticed, because I spent some time out in the West Swan, sort of Upper Swan area, and they're basically filling in all that corridor out to Ellenbrook and that kind of thing. But there's no infrastructure to support it at all. They're filling it all in with houses.
Well, the government in years gone by has also tried to create satellite cities to sort of distribute the central CBD.
Joondalup was meant to be one of those.
Well, yeah, so we had Joondalup, some attempts to do stuff in Coburn and other such suburbs, which has never really taken off. The government did force some of its government agencies to move out to these satellites.
Okay. I know Joondalup has been sort of touted as one of those satellite cities for a while, but it's never really achieved that kind of status. I've been down south to Coburn Way, and the expansion down there is huge. But once again, I don't know if it's going to turn out to be one of those satellites.
No, not in terms of the businesses that are in the core CBD of Perth aren't looking to move out that way.
Yeah.
You do have industry moving out.
How do you get? Yeah, it's an interesting thing. How do you get those kind of commercial businesses moving out that way? Because there's no draw for them to go there.
Well, no, exactly.
Yeah.
There's no incentive. They might get cheaper rents, but they're going to be far away from all their other business partners.
Yeah. Having driven through it recently, I see Geraldton's more of a satellite city than any of these other ones are. That's definitely expanded. Anyway, so yeah, it's worth having a look. There's some interesting sort of plans, and whether they actually eventuate or not is another thing. So.
Cool. Also, what broke through this week was a story on the Channel ABC's Four Corners program, which showed the mistreatment of juvenile detention.
Oh yeah,
juveniles under detention
in Darwin.
Yeah, did you happen to watch that?
I saw a bit of it. Yeah,
I was unable to watch it. I saw some of the pictures from it, and I just could not bring myself.
So there was a juvenile detention centre which has since been shut down.
Mm-hmm.
But the children have been moved to an antiquated adults.
So hold on, was it shut down because of the airing of this program?
No, I think it was on its way out anyway. Okay. But it's been shut down. They've been moved to another facility which used to be an adult prison, which is antiquated and also, drastically under resourced. But there's footage. There's quite blatant footage of just flat out abuse of these children. I mean, and the children reacting and like one of them breaking out and damaging goods, but then the guards are stepping in and absolutely beating down these children or strapping them to chairs, blindfolding them and leaving them there for hours, putting them in solitary confinement for days and days. Which, I mean, that's torture at the best of times. You can't do it to a child.
No.
So, from what I understand, it's being investigated whether anything eventuates from this or not. I mean, people have been talking about this, trying to raise these issues for a long time, in some of the circles, juvenile detention, also refugee and asylum seeker detention, and things like that. And it's just been falling on deaf ears. No one's been terribly interested. And it's not until you get some actual footage like what they've obtained here, where you can see it happening, and you just simply can't ignore it.
Well, this is a cultural problem we have in Australia, that Australians aren't interested in rehabilitation. They're only interested in punishment when it comes to the justice system.
They think punishment is a deterrence, and that's enough to satisfy the requirements for the justice system. Yeah.
Which is folly.
It doesn't work that way.
No, not at all.
Yeah, it just simply hasn't worked that way, and it's an expensive way to do it because you just simply get people reoffending and or entering the system and never leaving.
So I tried to do a little bit of research on a couple of the individuals that were shown in the images to get an idea of how they found themselves in the criminal system. I couldn't find too much information on that other than, they'd just been involved in crime and drugs and were in and out of the justice system. Okay, well, that's understandable.
So any one of a number of troubled youngsters kind of thing. Yeah.
To try and get a sense to what these individuals may have been doing to bring this sort of treatment upon themselves. I didn't really want to read too much into it. It just sounded really sad. And at the end of the day, it seemed... And I'll backtrack a little bit. I went to the Australian to get some, right-wing commentary. Of course, their sort of angle to why these children were being treated so inhumanely was what did those children do to get themselves there in the first place?
Yeah.
That was their angle. And I was thinking, it's irrelevant what those children did to get themselves. At the end of the day, they're being looked after by adults.
Yeah. We're responsible. We're meant to be held accountable for
So
for
the
our
problem
actions.
here is not what those kids did to put themselves. That's a whole nother issue. How did those adults find themselves in a position where they felt they had to lash out that way? Was it because of poor training? Was it because the inappropriate staff were being used to conduct these activities? Or,
Is it systemic?
is it systemic? Is the wrong sort of culture
Well,
there?
the prison. What was his title? The prison minister of Northern Territory resigned, or was he forced out, or he resigned?
He resigned over it.
Yeah. So that kind of implies that maybe there is a systemic issue because perhaps he knew about it and hadn't done anything about it. So, yeah. At least there does seem to be some heads rolling and
that's
some
one
account.
aspect. But I mean, if it's a systemic problem, how do you change that?
Well, at least they're going to look to see if it's systemic or whether it's just people acting out and not receiving adequate training or whatever it is, and they can look for ways to solve the issue, I guess. But I mean, Northern Territory may be making the headlines, but I doubt this isn't a problem that's just happening up there.
I wouldn't imagine it's an isolated problem. I would imagine the same sort of issues are happening in northern Western Australia.
Well, Aboriginal deaths in custody is a huge issue, and it's once again everyone keeps saying, "Well, what do they do to put themselves in that situation?" Well, I don't care what they did to put themselves. When they got into the back of a van and they're asking for a drink of water and they die of dehydration.
Exactly.
That's a fucking problem.
Regardless of what those individuals have done, that's an issue they have to answer to themselves of personal responsibility. But the system that incarcerates them has to be responsible for their welfare.
But not only that, I mean, when they start picking away and peeling this onion, they get to the deaths in custody, so the treatment of the certain prisoners and things like that. And then they get to policing rates. So how often are people, like, for example, Aboriginals getting detained at all? And people go, well, they commit more crimes. Or do they commit more crimes, or are they just getting policed more?
I tend to take a global view when it comes to criminal justice in terms of I want to reduce the recidivism rate. I want people coming out of jail not recommitting crimes.
Yeah,
the only way to do that is you don't harden them up in jail. Yes, I know everyone wants their pound of flesh from people who commit crimes, and I have not been a victim of crime, so I know it's easy for me to have those grandiose.
Yeah, but it's also the fact.
But I think it's a pragmatic point of view at the end of the day is that sometimes we have to swallow the bitter pill that we can't punitively punish every single individual if we want a safer society in general.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And, there's case studies you can see of other countries where they do take their rehabilitation seriously.
Well, the Scandinavian countries who were historically very barbarous and yet have seemed to found a way to go, perhaps barbary isn't the way for a greater society. And their prison systems are very focused on rehabilitation.
And the rate of recidivism is way down.
Yeah. They only have like a 20%.
The downside is you end up having people like Anders Breivik, who is just a plain out despicable individual, and he gets to stay in a Scandinavian jail, which apparently is not such a bad way.
But I don't think he's a product of Scandinavian jail.
No. But what I mean...
That's an unfair slight of the Scandinavian prison systems.
But this is the argument that the Conservatives will bring out and say, well, then you get this guy and he can just sit there and he's got a PlayStation or something. You know what I mean? That's their argument against.
What do you want? Do you want him to be, have his nails ripped out and have a really dangerous society, or go, you know what, I'm going to have to swallow that bitter pill. I know that guy is sitting in a comfortable cell playing PlayStations, but yeah, I'm safe to walk the streets knowing that I live in a low crime society. I know which one I want to pick.
You're absolutely right, but I guess those people that are more motivated by the lizard portion of their brain, and this is the reason why the victims of crime are not given the choice of what punishment should be given, because it's left up to someone who should be impartial and stuff like that. Because you cannot get a just sort of decision out of someone if
I acknowledge
they're being
that,
emotive.
But what angers me is when the greater public, who haven't been victims of crime, are still baying for blood. I can understand the small minority who've suffered a direct pain from inflicted crime, lashing out for that. I understand that.
So I guess why is it?
But when people who haven't been directly affected are baying for blood.
And I know those people. I'm around those people. Australia seems particularly bad for it. why is Australia so bad, and yet somewhere like Scandinavia, it's just not controversial?
Well, that's why I'm curious.
It's weird, isn't it?
Once again, I was alluding to before, the land of the Vikings, the lovers of blood and mayhem and warfare, and yet have found a path to peaceful, civilized society and treatment of people. How?
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
But
Okay.
yeah, that was the other interesting thing I saw.
I guess the only thing we've got left to talk about is a little bit of the US election. I know you've got one particular...
DWS, Debbie Wasserman Schwartz.
I was going to talk a general update because there's been the Democratic National Convention's been on, and it's as opposed to the Republican one, it was a rather stately affair that... Well, actually, I wouldn't say stately. It's got a...
Did they talk about Benghazi at the Democratic Convention?
There was no
Benghazi?
mention, no mention.
I thought that was the biggest issue that America was facing was Benghazi.
The funny thing was, you listen to the people commenting about it. The Republican National Convention occurred in Cleveland, and apparently that place is a police state for the week that it happened. Police everywhere, and almost no protest. Whereas the DNC, heaps of protests, almost no police.
Where was the DNC one?
The DNC was in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So there was a lot of peaceful protesting. There was a lot of Bernie or busters, a lot of people protesting Hillary Clinton. There's a lot of substantive sort of protests going on. There was a lot of protests against the DNC itself about the processes that it had there and how it had kind of messed with its own processes in getting Hillary Clinton to the nomination, of which Hillary Clinton accepted. Someone else I know I was talking to about this, they found it interesting that she accepted the nomination of a president for candidate for president. Whereas it's kind of funny to say she accepts the nomination when she's worked very hard to get that nomination. She takes that nomination.
She sold her soul to get that nomination.
There's one thing you definitely say about Hillary Clinton. She works hard, and she worked hard to get that nomination.
Oh, she played the game and played it very well.
But the choice of language about accepting it as if it was being thrust upon her and she really didn't want it. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, you try. She's no Leah Dharma.
No, that's right.
There's a Battlestar Galactica reference for you.
So it was an interesting convention. As I said, there was lots of protests. There was genuine division in the party down process lines and also policy lines and things like that. So it was interesting to watch. But one thing that came out was just before the convention kicked off, some emails were leaked.
Yes.
By the now infamous Guccifer, or Guccifer 2.0, I think, or something like that.
Is that an individual or website? Or?
Well, it's supposedly an individual,
Okay.
but there's also some controversy over whether he's a Russian hacker.
Was that part of the WikiLeaks release?
He released them to WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks released them. So, and these were emails that showed that the Democratic National Committee had been thumbing the scales in favour of Hillary. Now, not so much that it would have affected the outcome anyway. The outcome was pretty much going to go the way it was. But showing that they were not impartial, where they'd been claiming, and particularly our friend Debbie Wasserman Schultz had been claiming all the way along that they're completely impartial and did not prefer either one of the candidates. Yet these emails showed quite literally that yes, they were favouring one over the other, and they were deliberately trying to, introduce some of the officials within the Democratic Party were trying to get reporters, so impartially asking reporters to ask certain questions of Bernie that they know would trip him up and maybe,
Like I think one of them was his perceived weak spot of him being an atheist.
Yeah, that's right. So he managed to get away by saying he was a Jew, which is fine, but he didn't have to elaborate as to whether he was practicing the Judaic faith.
It was
because he's essentially an atheist.
A trivial fallback.
That's
position.
right. But
Gave him a bit of a defensive shield.
Yeah, because in America, being an atheist is probably worse than being a Muslim. I don't know. It's kind of weird, though.
Yes,
it is kind of weird over there. Expressing no
faith.
faith.
For a secular country, they have a lot of God happenings in their government process.
It took them a long time to get anything other than a Protestant president, and now then they got a Catholic one, and
now they've got a Muslim.
And now they're anyway. So as a result of these emails, Debbie Wasserman Schultz resigned.
Yes, she stepped down as the head of
The chair of the
Democratic National Committee.
Yeah. And then was immediately hired by Hillary Clinton.
I know that was weak. That was truly.
So what
and I mean, the obvious reason as to why she was hired by that campaign was, as you mentioned before, she's a huge money earner for the.
She's a huge money earner. She's worked for Hillary Clinton's campaign before. She worked for an 08.
Yeah.
Clearly, and clearly, she's a team player. So they wanted.
I mean, from Hillary's point of view, she's great.
Yeah, absolutely great. But here's a party that has some genuine divisions. There's a lot of new people coming in that are very disillusioned with the way the party's being run and feel that they haven't been effectively courted for their vote. So they're not necessarily going to vote that way. And the person that was really the figurehead of why they might have been why the division might be there is being hired by Hillary Clinton. So it didn't do much to get rid of these talks about division within the party, because at the moment there does seem to be some genuine divisions there. Most Bernie supporters apparently will be voting for Hillary, but I don't think you can accurately gauge yet how much voter apathy might come into this election.
It's going to be interesting. Did you hear Debbie Wasserman Short's conciliation speech of having stepped down from the chair?
No, I didn't.
She received lots of boos.
There was a lot of booing going on at this at the DNC altogether at the convention, and she definitely would have got a few. But like people like Elizabeth Warren, who was traditionally a bit of a darling of the progressive left, even she got booed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
booing for everyone.
Well, there's some hardcore Bernie or busters out there that really thought that they've been sold down the river a little bit. So
yeah, well, what was it? Oh, Dem exit or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, but
hashtag?
I think this is something when you get a political system which has gone out of its way to it's not actually a two-party system, and yet it's structured itself that way. If you know what I mean. There's nothing
There's nothing in the Constitution that says there can only be two parties.
That's right. However, everything is structurally geared that way, so it's so hard for any outside voices in another party to come along. So when you've got that situation and people are trying to work and inch their way into the existing system, I just get the feeling you're going to get these people speaking out because we're quite, well, some people might consider us lucky or unlucky. We have all these other small parties which can get a say.
Yes.
And so there's that kind of outlet for people who don't fit within the traditional major parties and things like that. There's just no outlet like that, really. I mean, you got the Greens and that, but everyone knows they don't stand a chance of getting anything, of getting anywhere.
Well, the other interesting thing that something wonky mentioned today is that we're lucky we don't have the first past the post system, and we have a system of preferential voting. So we can vote with our conscience and have our preferences go for the more strategic aspect of the votes, whereas in America, you just have to straight up strategically vote to make sure the person you don't want to get in doesn't get in.
No, that's right, and that way people can feel they're being heard. And if those parties, those fringe parties, get enough, they strike a note with the populist public and suddenly do quite well, they can get representation. It's going to work that way.
Unfortunately, in our system, the wrong people seem to get noticed.
It works. It does work in that you end up with the Pauline Hansons every now and then and the Darren Hinches as well.
Yes.
I was just trying. I've lost my train of thought. There was a. Yeah, so when you have that system, you're going to end up with people that are existing within the current party structure, and they're going to be speaking out, and to sort of hammer them down and try and shut them up. It's not going to work. I mean, you're going to get those people that won't shut up, and they're going to be they're going to be in your party, and they're going to be making a lot of noise at this convention. And that's kind of what happened. There were walkouts, there was back turning, there were people with tape over their mouth, silent protests. There was a whole lot more protesting going on at the DNC than there was at the Republican.
Did they talk about policy in their speeches?
Yeah, there was at the DNC. There was a lot more talk about policy, and this is why a lot of people, even some fairly leftist people, are saying, "Come on, you need to shut up now and just toe the line a little bit," because Bernie and his movement genuinely affected the outcome, or of at least the policy platform.
Positions, yeah, agreed.
How much of that gets acted on after the election, who knows? But they certainly got a lot more included than ever would have been included if Bernie hadn't been around. So they got a fair amount of work in there. The fact that Hillary shut down a few of their speakers because she was afraid of what the speakers would get up there and say at the
I did
convention.
it there. So some speakers got bounced, right? So was that Hillary's call or the establishment's
I
call?
don't know who called. Well, when it comes to, at this point, there's no difference between Hillary and the establishment now.
Right.
At this point, she's the nominee. She is the head of the party until when Barack Obama ceases his presidency, she becomes the head of the party.
Right.
So
Is that how it works? So she's the head of the party.
the president is the head of the party. So when he finishes his presidency, she will essentially be the head of the party. Yeah. So there's no difference really between her and the establishment now. So who made that call? I don't really know. But you had some fairly the darlings of the progressive left, Nina Turner, who was a massive advocate of
Yeah,
Bernie.
I heard she got bounced.
She was going to be talking, introducing Bernie Sanders, and she got bounced because she's very outspoken about what she doesn't like about certain things.
So what was Bernie Sanders' speech about?
It was his typical sort of stuff, but I mean, his typical stuff that he's been saying for the last 45 years.
Yeah.
You know, he's been saying it all along, which is one of the reasons people trusted him, was because his tone has not changed.
Yeah.
Except for at the end where he vehemently endorsed Hillary Clinton because we need to stop. And one of the things when he came out was in another speech where he was coming out and trying to shut up these Bernie busters a little bit because he thinks a bit of party unity is necessary. He says we can boo all we like, right? But at the end of the day, I'm paraphrasing him, but at the end of the day, we have to look our children in the eyes if we end up with a President Trump.
Yes.
And that was that struck home a fair bit. But the one thing I am interested in seeing how this goes, because we can argue on a micro level with individuals about why you should vote for Hillary Clinton, why Donald Trump is terrible. And I must admit, there's a lot of this. It's not necessarily Hillary's good, but Trump is bad kind of thing. We can talk about that a lot, but that's not necessarily going to get people to go out to vote. Now, we have a compulsory voting system here in Australia, so we have to vote. And I've been in situations where I didn't like the options presented to me. I almost didn't vote, and I was going to get fined not to vote. In America, they don't get fined. They just don't turn up.
Yep. It's not
So
compulsory.
if Hillary Clinton does not activate that base
They
of
don't even
hers,
get 50% of the people voting.
that's right. So I'm a little bit. It's going to be interesting because sure, Trump may not have a massive support base either, because it may not actually be that many arsehole racists in America. But if Hillary Clinton can't activate her base and get them excited and get those people out there, the Bernie people who were actively campaigning for Bernie and doing all the legwork, I mean, that's the enthusiasm you need. If she can't get that, this may not be as a home run.
Well, I mean, and obviously Donald Trump has the same issue.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. He doesn't have a ground game, Bruce.
We haven't talked much about the Republican conference. I think
We did
we
talk
talked
about
about last week, but a lot of the darlings of the Republican Party didn't show up for the conference.
Yeah, the list of celebrities on either side. You definitely had some classier celebrities on the Democratic side.
Yeah,
turning out there wasn't much of the party faithful going along to the Republican one, whereas all the party faithful.
well, I
were
mean,
there.
and you had Ted Cruz pretty much not endorse. Well, he just blatantly did not endorse Donald Trump.
Yeah, he obviously didn't include it in his speech, and then got up there and definitely did not endorse him. And I guess that's kind of one thing they were trying to avoid with the Democrats were trying to avoid with Nina Turner, is someone getting up there and not endorsing, because she wasn't going to endorse. They knew that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the voter apathy angle and how much that comes into play, I mean, that could make the difference. That could make the difference.
Well, and how many? Well, if Donald can get the base to vote for him, then it will be a matter of how many of the swing voters can he get? Can he bring?
Yeah,
to his
which
side?
which so all the projections say that he's just not going to get many independents, because all the racists were already Republicans to begin with, pretty much. So, and whereas Bernie was overwhelmingly winning with independents, that's completely up in the air with Hillary.
Now, is Bernie going to continue contributing to the campaign?
I believe he's going to be campaigning
Right,
for her. Yeah, so everyone will be out there campaigning. When you look at the list of people campaigning for Hillary, and then you compare it to Trump, it doesn't seem like it's going to be close. It doesn't even seem like it.
I'm really excited to see the general election campaigns kick off.
Well, just how
Because
much.
obviously Hillary's coming there with a well-tuned campaign machine, whereas Trump, it's all up in the air.
Yeah.
What's he bringing to the to the campaign?
He virtually had a Twitter meltdown the other day. So the final, was it second to final night? They brought out the big guns: Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, Bloomberg, and they all took a big axe to Donald Trump, and he went in and had a bit of a Twitter meltdown about it. So
Apparently, he's taking off the gloves.
yeah. So, and that, which was also one of the things that Hillary brought up in her speech on the final night, was that if you've got a president that gets slighted by people and then takes to Twitter, and that is that the kind of temperament you want in a president? I don't think so. It's interesting, and I'm still going to be paying attention. I actually don't think it'll be close. As I said, the only thing I'm concerned about is the voter apathy thing.
That's true. Well, I want to see the first debate. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh wow, yeah, that will be good. That should be a drinking
It's
event.
not, yeah, well, definitely. But there's not a lot of time between now and November. Surprising. So we painfully dragged through a year worth of primaries.
Wow, that's
It's
yeah.
just a couple of months for the general election campaign.
Well, a couple of months is still longer than what we had. Isn't it crazy how long they take to get, and the money they spend on these things, just the sheer amount of money. I mean,
And it'll be ramping up from here on in.
yeah, hundreds of millions of dollars each candidate. I mean, I think Bernie even just through his small donor raising got in the order of $160 million or something like that. So, and certainly that's not even counting all the super PACs that have just upwards of $1 billion kind of thing happening, rolling through them. So, yeah, a lot of money being spent, and that's why they like having a long campaign, I guess.
Anyway, I think that's about it. You got anything else?
No, that's it.
That's a wrap. Thank you very much for listening. I've been Franco.
I've been Jason.